Hi, everybody. It's Lynn Cox here, clinical hypnotherapist, rapid transformational therapist, and stress and performance coach and expert. Anyway, I'm hopping on because I wanted to talk about this Time article that came out earlier this month titled 9 Wellness Trends to Ditch in 2023. So I will preface this by saying I don't ever suggest that we follow trends in terms of what we do in our behavior. Trends are usually trends for a reason. They've usually become a trend because there has been a concerted effort by some industry or another to promote the adoption of and typically purchase of whatever product or service is related to the trend. But trends are interesting because they greatly influence our perceptions as well as business investment, as well as consumer investment, consumer purchasing habits. So we are impacted by trends. And as we near the end of a year and go into a new year, there's all of these reports, business trends, health and wellness trends. So I liked a few things that I saw in this article, and I'm going to talk about a few of them. So they talk about 9 of the trends, but there are just a few I'm going to talk about, and they're talking about ones to consider ditching in 2023. So things that gained popularity over 2022, and they're suggesting maybe they're worth, going to the wayside in 2023. One of them, it's going to be the first I discuss, is this weight loss shots trend. The second one I think is worth discussing is the quiet quitting trend, which I hadn't actually heard that term used, but it essentially means doing the bare minimum at work. I think there are some reasons for that are worth discussing. They have to do with life purpose. Another one that I'd love to talk about is diagnosing yourself on TikTok, and I would add to that and say diagnosing yourself through the use of social media. And the other one that's really interesting, I think, here is this toxic body positivity, which also relates to the weight loss shots. So weight loss shots. I'm going to go back here. So we're in 2022 going into 2023. Since, as far as I know, since about the 70s and 80s, like remember, I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s. I grew up in the 80s, really. And back in those days, it was all about low fat everything. Fat was bad for you. And now we have diets that promise for people to be able to burn fat through eating, pretty much only protein. I can't remember what that one's called. Anyway, point being, these things change radically, and they change radically for a reason. If something, like I said, comes about as a trend, it doesn't just come into our culture out of thin air. There is a concerted effort for it to become a trend. That's the way our perceptions are, I would say, guided, and even go so far as to say manipulated. Huge amount. So this one in particular, I'm going to just pull from this article. They talk specifically about 2 weight loss injections that have gained enormous popularity, Ozempic and Wegovy. So apparently these medications are used to treat type 2 diabetes and obesity. And I'm thinking like serious obesity. And they've become really hot commodities, even among people without those 2 particular conditions. And so I'm pulling from this article. This doctor says, there are people on Reddit and TikTok and other platforms hearing about it, and they're hearing people's success stories, and those are being amplified many times over. So when it comes to people who want to shed weight, and I've worked with a lot of people around this issue, so much of it is psychological. There's a psychological reason for why we have the habits that we do, why we crave foods that we do, why we overeat. Even something as simple as eating too quickly and not being quite tuned into our bodies can cause us to gain weight or be unable to, or make it more difficult to come to a healthier body weight, to shed weight. So there are these reasons behind it, but we want to, as humans, typically move away from discomfort. So changing any kind of habit, habitual way of being, to our minds signals discomfort. So when it comes to, say you're overweight, it's unhealthy, because that's another thing, and I'll get into that when we talk about the toxic body positivity. Being obese is not healthy. Being obese is linked to a number of other health risk factors and disease, and it's also connected to a lot of psychological and emotional issues as well too. So it's not healthy, and it's not to shame anybody for looking a certain way, but it's been scientifically proven being obese is unhealthy. But if, because we're human, we tend to move away from discomfort, we want comfort, when we consider psychological reasons for eating, overeating, snacking, wanting certain foods like fatty foods, salty foods, sugary foods, changing those habits and having healthier habits so that you can shed weight, that is discomfort to our minds. So much of it is a psychological issue for people, being able to change habits, and also, wanting to see quick results, instant results, living in a culture where so much is online, digital, people are seeing themselves online all the time. I can understand, purely, like really seriously understand people being drawn to, just get me that prescription because I just need to lose some weight and I'm tired of trying all these other things that don't work. But really, and this article states it's the most basic kind of approach. You need to be eating a healthy mix of whole foods, lots of vegetables, healthy protein, getting enough exercise, getting enough movement, getting enough sleep, getting enough hydration, and hopefully also managing your stress levels, because being highly activated, operating in your stress response, your sympathetic nervous system, can do all sorts of things to your hormones, impact your digestion, etc., etc. So it's the most simple things that really are going to help people lose weight in a healthy, sustainable way, but it requires changing habits. It requires discomfort. It requires, moving into unfamiliar territory from familiar territory. So if your usual is, eat dinner on the fly, pre-prepared stuff around 8 or 9 o'clock, snack while you're watching a show and, sitting down, being still when maybe you've sat all day at a computer for work, to change these things up, it's changing your habits. And also, as humans, we always want to go to the familiar. That is how we're wired. That means safety for us. So, I can see why these shots have become popular in 2022. I'm really pleased to see a large publication like Time, who has a huge following, look at this and go, maybe that's a health trend that, we could look at ditching. And this doctor who's being quoted here talks about, they talk about one other thing, which is now there's supply chain issues with this drug. Some of them are experiencing shortages, and people who need the drug for their diabetes treatment, they could be at risk for not being able to access it. But they talk about the fact that emphasizing fruits, vegetables, protein, and whole grains is the way to approach your diet. I couldn't agree more. I would also add in those other things like adequate movement, exercise, rest, hydration, and stress management. And this particular doctor says this, and I love it. I tell my patients that diet should be like a marriage. It needs to be sustainable. So I think it goes without saying, to the point of these, injections to unnaturally suppress your appetite, um, probably not sustainable. What are you going to do when you have to come off those drugs? I think without a careful plan in place, you could just risk gaining weight. And then also, who knows if you'd be at risk for the possible side effects they list of these drugs, which do not sound very pleasant. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's about having discernment. When you see something that looks like it's a really quick fix, too good to be true, I would ask yourself, who's gaining from it? Where's the financial gain? Does this make sense? I mean, if you use discernment and logic, I think most people do know deep down, changing something like your body weight, your body composition is probably going to take some effort. It's probably going to take some sustained time and effort to really switch that over. You're not only going to have to work with your body and habits, but for it to be sustainable, you're going to need to work with your mind as well. And it can be done. A lot of people have really good success when they take a realistic, mature, measured approach to it. And you can actually make what's unfamiliar familiar. So I'm going to talk more about a few of these, leading up to the holiday season. But those are my thoughts on that for today. And I hope everyone's having a great day.